hidden injuries. The idea of hidden injuries relates to a theme which has increasingly interested me recently, because I've realized that our lives are trapped in a certain way, in that there are many things which are structurally present in our lives about which we can do very little except recognize their presence. And once we do recognize their presence, then perhaps we can come to terms with them. It's a similar idea to that of Sigmund Freud, who, when faced with a number of patients with severe mental problems, decided that one way to solve this was to go down into their hidden injuries, that is, things that they had buried from their past, from their childhood and later life, and they no longer could see them, but they were affecting them very deeply. So it's a buried kind of injury which affects us all. And the ones that I am particularly interested in are structural ones, as I mentioned. Those are class, gender, race, and others, and age. Now, class, for example, there is a book called The Hidden Injuries of Class, which influenced me by its title, by Richard Sennett and Cobb. And their idea, which is typical of the approach, is that America preaches the dream that anybody can reach any level in American society. You can start with nothing and you can become president or head of a big corporation. Whereas in practice, there are many factors which make it more or less impossible and skew the whole system. And the hidden injury is that people continue to believe that anything is possible and then find themselves right at the bottom. And instead of blaming the system, they blame themselves. They say it's because I didn't do the right things and missed opportunities and so on. So they turn on themselves. And this is something which was also pointed out to me by an Indian sociologist of caste and class, and Andre Bataille. And he said to me, Alan, you in the West have a particular problem. We have caste, which makes people born unequal. And that's bad enough, but at least you know it wasn't your fault. Whereas with class, you have the option, supposedly, of a ladder up which you can climb, but many people get trapped lower down it and can't climb it. And so they're not only placed in an inferior position, but they also blame themselves for not having achieved it. And that is a kind of hidden injury, which once you recognize it, then maybe you can come to terms with it. Another is obviously race. Many societies proclaim that the races are equal, as in America now. But when people look around them, they see that in practice there is huge discrimination in every aspect of life, from education, through jobs, through living standards and areas. And that's why things like the Black Lives Matter movement came, because it was trying to actually make external that black lives were there before it was hidden away as an assumption. Another, obviously, is sex or gender. And here, the great battle of 100 years of the feminists trying to point out that while on the surface, in many societies, people say, oh, well, of course, men and women are equal and so on. But as George Orwell put it, some are more equal than others, and there was systematic discrimination against women in every aspect of their lives, as there still is. And finally, then there's age. People will say, of course, we respect old age, and I'll be old one day, and I like my grandparents, and so on and so on. But as Peter Laslett, who worked on the third age, and now as I reach the third and fourth ages, realize there are hidden assumptions, and not exactly injuries, except that people no longer take you quite in the way they did before. They don't take you seriously. They start patronizing you occasionally. No, that hasn't happened to me much. And certainly, as you move into the fourth age, when you are dependent on others, either mentally or physically, then people start treating you again as a child. They say, oh, well, Granny can't go on living there, we'll have to move her somewhere else. So you are infantilized, and that is another kind of hidden injury. Now, recognizing all these hidden injuries, there's one much bigger one which has interested me, and this is modernity. I define modernity as a separation between different parts of our lives, basically our head and our heart and our spirit and our body, or power, politics, economics, wealth, society, social life, and belief in religion. And in order to become an efficient, rational, modern society, we have to keep these and increasingly keep them apart. But as Max Weber and others talked about in their ideas of the disenchantment of the world and the iron cage, this has many hidden injuries, because as you do that, splitting a part of your life, as I did as I grew up from being a child, you gain something. You gain control of your life. Things are more efficient. You can maybe make more wealth and make the world in some ways a materially better place. On the other hand, you lose something. It's very similar, as I've observed, to when transport changes the access to places. When I used to go to the remote parts of the Himalayas, it was very difficult to get up to the village where I worked in Nepal. But the satisfaction of doing that was wonderful. Now I can just get into a jeep and drive up to it. And I've gained a great deal, but I've lost a great deal at the same time. And the same with the Outer Hebrides, where my parents bought a croft. At the beginning it was a great adventure to go to the Outer Hebrides, and you felt you were in another world. Now you can just get on a plane at anywhere and you'll be there in a couple of hours. So as we gain control and rationality, so we lose magic and mystery and wonder. The only solution to all these kinds of hidden injuries, as I mentioned, as with Freud, is to make them external, to lay them out, to say every benefit has a cost and every situation is a progressive one. We will never reach full equality of gender, class, age, race. As human beings, there will always be hidden injuries, but as with other injuries, when you are injured, if you actually examine the injury, then you can put at least some plaster and medicine on it, as long as it's just an aching pain. And that's why I like the idea of injury. It's not a disease. It's like my shoulder at the moment, which I've pulled, and it's just there, and I don't know what causes it, and I do exercises, and gradually it improves. So facing the hidden injuries of modernity and all these other things is a task which we should be taught about. If schools and other institutions actually taught us what these hidden injuries were and why they were there, then we might move a little further towards happiness and satisfaction. Thank you.